Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Nick Abbott on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Off to Washington, D.C. to talk to Simon Marks, LBC's US correspondent. Hello, Simon.
Evening, Nick.
Another quiet week in America?
Another lovely quiet weekend. Look, I mean, I think we're all keeping an eye on what is taking place in Los Angeles. We've seen clashes within the last few hours between anti-deportation protesters and National Guard, who have now been deployed on the streets of Los Angeles by order of President Trump. These are members of the California National Guard. You've got to go back all the way to 1965 to find a precedent for an American president taking control of a state's National Guard and deploying them on the streets of that state, despite the objections of the state's governor. That's what's taking place in California with Gavin Newsom, the Democrat who runs things in California, and Karen Bass, the Democrat mayor of Los Angeles, arguing that what Donald Trump is doing is engaging in inflammatory and escalatory tactics designed, they argue, to foment a confrontation with the protesters that over the last 3 days have taken to the streets in increasing numbers. And I think it's worth underscoring that more broadly across the country, protesters confronting agents of ICE, the Immigration, Customs and Enforcement Division of the US government, and the Border Patrol, these masked men and women who show up unannounced at places of employment, at big box stores like Home Depot, for example, where traditionally illegal immigrants either seek work or wait outside some of those hardware shops, offering themselves as day labourers to people who are leaving those shops with sort of home DIY or construction projects underway. Those have been the targets for many of these raids, where these masked agents have shown up unannounced and dragged people away, and then in the cases of hundreds, at least, of detained migrants, deported them without any due legal process, without the required legal hearing that the people that have been swept off the streets are entitled to in order to prove their innocence of being illegal migrants, if indeed they've got evidence to support that claim. So the protests are becoming increasingly emboldened, not just in California and in Los Angeles, but we're seeing this in other towns and cities and states all over the country. Donald Trump has taken to the presidential retreat in Camp David, where he is closeted with the Vice President J.D. Vance, other senior advisors, including military advisors, and he's put out a telling statement tonight over his social media platform. He says that Los Angeles, a once great American city, has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. And he says violent insurrectionist mobs are swarming and attacking our federal agents to try and stop our deportation operations. And he pledges to take all such action necessary to liberate Los Angeles from the migrant invasion and put an end to these migrant riots. Now, the most important word that he uses there is the descriptive of these protesters as insurrectionist mobs, because that is feeding into the concerns that critics of Donald Trump have that he is about to invoke the 1807 Insurrection Act. I think it's only been used twice before, and he would use that as the basis for deploying the Marine Corps and the US Army on the streets of America, which is not what they're designed to be used for, to confront political protesters. I think it's also worth underscoring that he is flatly wrong when he describes these protesters as mobs of illegal aliens and criminals. In fact, in many cases, they are demonstrations that are fueled by the fury of American citizens and American voters with the concept of masked men and women taking to the streets of this democracy and sweeping people off those streets without any due legal process. So I think concerning hours ahead here.
Yeah, I've been, on my other shows, I've been running a Trump bingo card, and right at the top of it, right from the moment that I started filling it in, was Donald Trump will have his people fire into crowds of protesters, and we are, I suspect, just hours away from that. And it is interesting, isn't it, the violent insurrectionist mobs, because on January the 6th, while Trump watched it all unfold on television, having having lit the blue touch paper and retired, there were assaults on 174 police officers, with at least 15 hospitalised. They caused $30 million worth of damage to the centre of the government building. 4 people were killed during the riot. 5 police officers died as a result. There were an unknown number of injuries, and Trump pardoned a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, that clearly was an insurrection, and what is taking place in Los Angeles is not an insurrection, certainly not by illegal aliens and criminals. But he is couching, I mean, this is almost the perfect storm for him politically. And you know that I agree with you entirely about his desire to put American troops on the streets of towns and cities all over the country, because I think that he covets the idea of invoking that Insurrection Act because it underpins his desire to make immigrants in this country, the other. He wants them to be the enemies of the state. And we've seen him going, obviously, through the motions of that in terms of the mass deportations that we have already seen taken place. But this is also the perfect storm in California because the state is governed by Democrats. In a statement yesterday, he accused Gavin Newsom, the governor, and Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, of being feckless Democrat leaders. He's absolutely trying to tie this violence to those Democrat elected leaders, accuse them of doing nothing to restore law and order in the city, even though they argue that it is his actions and his decision to federalize the National Guard that has escalated and inflamed the situation on the ground in Los Angeles. But this is an American president who needs to change the subject. He's had a terrible week with Elon Musk. His presidency is stuck in a rut. He can't advance peace negotiations in Ukraine. He can't bring peace to the situation in the Middle East. All of the things that he promised Americans that he was going to do, even stabilizing the economy. His tax and spending proposals are in difficulty up on Capitol Hill. All of those things, he's stuck in a rut as he tries to advance them. So he wants to change the conversation, and they have watched these protests grow over the last few weeks, and he has made a political decision that it is now in his best interests to begin the process of confronting these demonstrators, staining them with these descriptives of being illegal aliens and criminals, and being able to say to his core supporters, I told you I was going to engage in mass deportations. You like the idea of mass deportations. These people, supported by Democrats, are simply trying to stymie me in exercising the mandate you gave me. So he thinks he's onto a winner here.
Yes, well, there is one surefire way to increase your popularity figures, and that is to start a war, even if it's a civil one.
Look, I mean, I think that I think we're not at that stage yet. But there is no question that what we've witnessed in Los Angeles over the last 24 to 48 hours is concerning. And Gavin Newsom is, of course, along with Karen Bass, calling on demonstrators not to rise to President Trump's bait. They are advancing the argument, as Karen Bass put it, that violence and destruction are unacceptable. But what we saw over the last few hours is relatively small numbers of people gathered outside that federal detention center where the migrants are detained after they're hauled off the streets. And the National Guard and other law enforcement enforcement agencies being used to fire pepper spray and tear gas at those protesters in a bid, they said, to clear a path to the building's loading dock. And, you know, the atmosphere is so febrile, and the temperatures here are warming up. You know, it's approaching summer now, and protesters are becoming increasingly frustrated with the actions of the Trump administration. So this is a tinderbox situation.
A conspiracy theorist might think that this is precisely what Donald Trump wanted all along, and the deployment of those masked agent, or we don't even really know whether they actually work for the government at all. They could be anybody at all. They could be one of these people that Trump pardoned from the January the 6th riots. In fact, a lot of people are saying that's precisely who they are, because they don't have any uniform, they don't have any method of identification. It's like dystopian future which we're looking at in the present, and those actions to splitting families apart, arresting kids, putting them in handcuffs, taking people that have an absolute legal right to be in America and just deporting them out, would absolutely result in what is happening on the streets of LA now. And it's not a shock, it's the intended result from the Trump administration, a conspiracy theorist might think.
Well, I don't even think you have to be a conspiracy theorist to think that, because we know that in his first term in the Oval Office, President Trump discussed invoking the Insurrection Act, and he was only dissuaded from doing so because he had people in his inner circle in that administration who turned around and said no. And they include people that he now considers absolute traitors, like General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, other senior figures in his entourage who said simply, no, we're not going to do that. The U.S. Army, the Marine Corps, they are not designated to take up positions domestically on American soil and go after protesters exercising their First Amendment rights of free expression in the United States. So we know that he wanted to do it in the first term and was prevented from doing it by people that he now considers traitors that he appointed to his government. That's why in this term he has appointed only sycophantic acolytes. I mean, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, far from pushing back on anything that Donald Trump wants to do in Los Angeles, yesterday made it clear that he had put Marines on standby at Camp Pendleton in Southern California and would deploy them to Los Angeles if and when he thought it was necessary.
And Gavin
he's ahead of Donald Trump,
yes,
you know?
And Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said that, I can't remember the precise word he used, but it was demented, or words to that effect, because it absolutely is. The National Guard are trained in crowd control. The Marines are trained in killing people.
And also, Nick, it's also just worth underscoring, local law enforcement in California has been accused by ICE of leaving them to their own devices when these protesters confronted them. And at one point, ICE agents were contained in a building and they started calling the LAPD and saying, please send help. And they say that it took 3 separate call-outs to the LAPD before there was any response. Well, the Los Angeles County Sheriff was saying last night, there are limits to what local law enforcement is empowered to do, especially when a bunch of masked agents we know nothing about, operating under legal authorization about which we know nothing, say that we need to come and help them, and we're not going to go and do it. And Crosby, Stills and Nash won't be around to write a song about what is inevitably going to be next if it does turn into another Kent state. Yeah, but we've still got Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump is looking into him very strongly as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Simon, thanks very much for that. That's Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent.
Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Right now, get a free select tool when you buy the Craftsman V20 2-pack battery kit. Whether it's the backyard, the bathroom, or beyond, Craftsman has the tools to help you power through and get the project done right. Because DIYing is unpredictable, but your tools shouldn't be. Shop Craftsman at Lowe's today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Did you know that many products for pregnant women do not have their own clinical trials for safety or efficacy? That's because pregnant women are often excluded from clinical studies. Ritual is aiming to set a new standard with their Essential Prenatal Multivitamin. It's the #1 best-selling prenatal and the only leading prenatal backed by its own human clinical trial. Essential Prenatal is proven to deliver key nutrients, including folate, biotin, and vitamin D during pregnancy. Moms taking Essential Prenatal had a lower overall cortisol level during pregnancy than those taking a leading prenatal. Plus, it's designed to be gentle on the stomach. Ritual doesn't just have your back. They have the receipts. Get 25% off at ritual.com/clinical. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.